Good morning and welcome to day 3 of our journey. Yesterday was kind of a bust, really. Started out off to a bad start already. The ferry was closed. Had to drive an extra 100 miles round trip to go where we needed to. Got rained out, stormed out. Didn't get to exactly see as much of everything as I wanted to. And then on the way back, got stuck in a pretty long traffic jam on the Cape Fear Memorial Bridge. So, didn't really get to do a good outro yesterday. By the time I got back in, I was going to go out at dusk and do a little shark fishing, and I was just so exhausted, I went ahead, took a shower, and went on to sleep. So, today's a new day, though. Just got done eating breakfast, so starting the day off a little better today. Hopefully we can dodge some of the storms today, maybe be a little clearer for us. But we're just going to stay on the island today and do a little exploring around here. Okay, so we're pretty much at the northernmost end of the island that is accessible by road, and we're at the Food Lion Shopping Center. Now, this Food Lion actually has not been here. Well, I guess it has been here a little while now. I know it used to be over at the Federal Point Shopping Center years ago, but now looking back, it's probably been here probably close to 20 years now that I think about it. And we're just heading south on 421 on the island. 421 actually is the only real highway on the island, so as long as you find your way back to it, you can never get lost. And really, you can't get lost on the island anyways, because you're going to hit water eventually. Now over to our left here is one of 2 wings locations on the island. As with any beach town, you're going to have multiple wings or stores just like that. One of my favorite descriptions of a wings, if you've never been there, is by Danny McBride, talking about the show Eastbound and Down, which the 3rd season of was actually filmed around Carolina Beach area. But he said, if you've never been to a Wings, it's a place where you go in, they have a huge clearance sale, everything must go. You go back 10 years later, and it's still the exact same things on that clearance sale. Now we're pulling up to a Publix supermarket. This used to be the Federal Point Shopping Center. Where Publix is now was a Maxway store. I know it was that for years. We pretty much always made a stop in Maxway when I'd be here, either down here with my parents or coming here alone. That was pretty much our go-to store for non-grocery items down here. Now over here on our right is the grounds where used to stand the Jubilee Amusement Park. Now, as you can see, it's just a field grown up with weeds, a few trees, and for the last so many odd years, there's been a sign that a certain other supermarket was coming. I know a sign has been there for at least 6 years, probably longer. And the Publix has only been here for, I believe, less than a year now. So it looks like Publix beat them to the punch. I have many fond memories, though, of Jubilee Amusement Park. We'd always make a point to stop here. Around here is where the batting cage was, part of the amusement park still. Now the island's not quite what it used to be. Some people say for the better, some people for the worst. I know a lot has changed since I was younger. This over here next to what is now a Jersey Mike's was also the Jungle Mini Golf. I believe after a while the name changed to Carolina Beach Golf and Games. A lot has closed down over the years, and of course, being along the coast, hurricanes can definitely take a toll in the area. But a lot has been built since then. A lot has taken these old businesses' place. Right now we're just riding down the strip from Carolina Beach down to Kure Beach. Now, of all the years I've been coming down here, all the times I've been down here, there's still quite a few businesses along the strip that I've never been to. Many of these have been here as long as I can really remember. Just never take the time to stop in and check them out. Now here on the right is Carolina Beach Lake, which actually once held the world record of being the closest freshwater lake to a saltwater body. And now passing Atlantic Towers on the right is the last rather tall building along the strip as you now enter Kure Beach city limits. Now, I've been corrected before, and I believe also misinformed a time or two, whether it's pronounced Curry or Kure Beach. I've never been quite sure of, so again, to anyone watching, forgive me for not getting it right on the first try. Now the Kure Beach Strip is always really recognizable to me. Every single house is a different, brightly painted color. Whereas Carolina Beach is mostly a tourist destination, Kure Beach for the most part is actually residential. Kure Beach stretch is actually not that long before you start crossing into the community of Fort Fisher. We have now finally reached the end of the line on 421 at the very end of the island. Out here on our left is actually where we would have been boarding the ferry yesterday, had it been open. And now we're going to start heading back northward. Now beginning 421 north. As I said in a previous video about 421, it can take you all the way from Fort Fisher, North Carolina to, I believe, right on the Michigan state line, if I am not mistaken. So we are now on the Basin Trail at Fort Fisher recreational area. Now we're going to do a little exploring out this way. I've actually never walked this before. I've been wanting to for many years, so I'm going to take you all along with me while I do. Now out here in the Fort Fisher recreation area, possibly the most barren land there is on the entire island, with the exception of the aquarium and the visitor center peeking up over the tree line. Out here is nothing but sand and some marshland over here. Now, as I mentioned yesterday, talking about Weekend at Bernie's, while most of the movie was filmed on Bald Head Island, especially outdoor scenes along the water and the shots with the lighthouse in the background, the house used in the movie, Bernie's house where the party took place, was actually shot right here in the Fort Fisher recreation area. They built the house for the set of the movie and then tore it down immediately afterwards. But we're going to keep walking and see what more lies ahead. Now, here near the end of the trail is this abandoned World War II bunker, but it has not actually been abandoned since World War II. This was actually the home of one Robert E. Harrell, known also as the Fort Fisher Hermit. I believe Mr. Harrell was from around the Concord or Mooresville, North Carolina area, and after a while he just decided to let go of the rest of society and come out this way, live off the land, and just become a recluse all to himself. He spent his days inside this bunker, which, as you can see, is not optimal living conditions. He spent his days living in here from the mid-50s to the early 70s, where his body was found in the summer of 1972. His murder, or death I should say, has been unsolved to this day. Most people do suspect that he was unfortunately murdered. Most people report him as a very kind man, never harming anyone, and people would come out here and give him donations as he'd share stories of life and his philosophy on society and all current events. We have finally reached the end of the trail here at this overlook. It was about a little over a mile, but it does feel a little bit longer walking on the sand through most of the trail. Behind me lies the basin, then this rock jetty that you can possibly see out there. Beyond that is the Cape Fear River, where we have been showing quite a bit of on this journey. Then just beyond that is the town of Southport, where we were yesterday. You can see the Brunswick nuclear facility way on the other side of the river. Again, if we had been on the ferry, all this would have been all the more visible, being surrounded by it. But I suppose this is as close as we're going to get on this trip. Now, as you can see behind me here, maybe you can see that Jeep way out in the distance, and the dunes out there on the horizon. That is actually still the beach strand on Pleasure Island in the Fort Fisher beach area. Now, if you look out this way though, possibly able to see beyond the horizon is Bald Head Island. Now, the two used to be two separate islands, but back in the 90s, I believe it was in 96, and Hurricane Fran came through the area, closed in the inlet between the two, and now Pleasure Island and Bald Head Island are all one island, so you can actually walk from Fort Fisher to Bald Head Island if you really wanted to, but I believe that's 20 some miles of walking, and in this humid sun out here in this marsh, that's not a walk I'm going to be making anytime soon. Now, unfortunately, I accidentally left the radio going through the first part of this segment, so rather than face a copyright strike, I'll just dub the audio over. Now, this on my left is what gives the town its name, the actual Fort Fisher. The fort was constructed in 1861 to protect the port of Wilmington from Union troops, and was the largest fort of the Confederacy. The actual Battle of Fort Fisher was the most decisive Civil War battle fought in North Carolina. Now, this was always a staple in our beach trips with my family. I don't think a single trip passed that we didn't visit the Fort Fisher battleground. If you're someone like me who loves history, especially Civil War related, this is definitely a stop to make if you're in the area. But I do highly suggest that you plan said trip for the early spring or fall. As we always came here in the middle of summer, it was quite possibly the most miserable part of our trips, being in the open sun, in the muggy air of the salt marshes. Still very fascinating. Just plan your time here wisely. Here's a little better look at the remains of the fort, heading southward on 421 from earlier in the day. And even if historical sites are not your thing, it's still a beautiful place to visit all the same. Now, we've been walking the better part of the afternoon. It's now almost 2:30. We've been walking since right about noon. And probably not the best day. As you saw, a lot of that was just open, sandy beach, right out in the direct sun, and actually not even on the beach really, more in the salt marshes. So very humid, very muggy, not a lot of breeze coming off of the ocean, a little too much inland, the dunes blocking that. So probably not the best day to be walking around outdoors, but we're about to head to the Kure Beach fishing pier, try to get a couple hours of fishing in, and get off our feet for a little while. So, while I said we were going to go fishing at Kure Beach Pier, didn't actually get to fish any. Got out there, and they required a mask on the pier, and I mean, we have our masks with us, but I can wear it inside, but I do have asthma, and it makes it hard enough to breathe the air in the hot weather normally. So I'm not able to wear this outside for long. So we pretty much just made a lap around the pier, came back. I'll probably make it up for tonight though, fish a little more on the surf. But anyways, right now we are at Carolina Beach State Park. We visited 2 state parks today, both on the island. And I've been here quite a few times. I've camped here a few times, walked the trails plenty of times. There's I think one trail that I haven't walked yet, and we plan to do that today, but honestly, a little give out from walking so much earlier. So we're just gonna walk a couple of the small trails today. One of which, well, both have already walked, but one of which is the Venus Flytrap Trail. Now, what a lot of people do not know is that in the area around Wilmington and the Pleasure Island area, within maybe only about a 50-mile radius, it is the only place in the world where Venus flytraps grow in the wild. And I have been on this trail before to try to spot them, and maybe I just didn't know what I was exactly looking for, or I wasn't looking in the right places. I didn't see any then, but we're going to try to find some today. So of course it is starting to rain again, so we are going to have to cut our little hike short today, but I have finally found a Venus flytrap. Unfortunately, I believe that people have been harvesting them from the trail, so it makes it much harder to find, but that's why it is now actually a felony to harvest a wild Venus flytrap. So, a brief history on Pleasure Island that I think is a little interesting fact. Pleasure Island was not always an island. It used to be a peninsula known as Federal Point, and there still are quite a few things on the island known as Federal Point, such as the Federal Point Shopping Center where Publix is now. But what you see behind me here is Snow's Cut, this body of water which separates Pleasure Island from the mainland and connects the Cape Fear River to the Atlantic Ocean a few miles upstream of the mouth of the Cape Fear River. It was designed in, I believe, the 1930s, maybe a little bit earlier, mostly for recreation. It is part of the Atlantic Intracoastal Waterway System. So it's made for recreational boats, sailboats, maybe a few yachts. No really big cargo or tanker ships usually come through here much. But this was actually cut out of the land at a small part of the peninsula between the Atlantic Ocean and Cape Fear River. So when they cut through the land, the water filled in the gap naturally and created Pleasure Island, where we are on now. Now, see, I had planned to walk the Snows Cut Trail, which takes you almost just up into the Snows Cut Bridge, which we've drove over a couple times now. I've showed you already. But as you can see, it's raining again for just about, it's rained almost about every day of this trip. But, you know, whatever. But the Snows Cut Bridge, you know, now where it is a very high-rise arching bridge, it used to be fairly low to the water, and it was an iron swing span bridge, which would swing in the middle to let the boats go in and out. Now the bridge is high enough that boats like what you see going by now can go through without any use of a drawbridge or swing span. Now for one of my favorite parts of the entire trip since I was a kid, the Carolina Beach Boardwalk. It's one of the last vintage boardwalks along the entire East Coast, hanging around since the 1930s. Now before my time, I've been told that throughout the 70s and into the 80s, the boardwalk had a more notorious reputation, with quite a few seedy bars and other joints along the back alleyways. My parents even said that they never walked the boardwalk until my sister and I were a little older, in about the late 90s. And by then, it was the family-friendly beach hub that we all know now. Now here on the right, though, is where the rides typically are. Naturally, this year the rides were never set up, but it seems as though a parking lot is in their place now. I don't know where they're going to go after this, but I guess we'll have to find out in the years to come. Of course, unfortunately, many of the shops along the boardwalk were closed this year due to the virus, but hopefully they'll be able to open back up for next season. I would hate to think that some of the little useless trinket shops won't be there for me to browse around aimlessly and never actually buy anything in. But nevertheless, they're still some of my favorite places to visit. And aside from the rides and typical souvenir beach shops, there are many other things to do along the boardwalk. Miniature golf, multiple restaurants with outdoor seating, and of course at certain times of the year, live music and fireworks are a favorite boardwalk pastime here. And behind all the shops and restaurants, along the beach strand is the actual wooden boardwalk. Now in the last few years, the town of Carolina Beach has done an extensive upgrade on the boardwalk, with multiple beach access points, benches, and a small pavilion right near the heart of the boardwalk area. Unfortunately, one of my only complaints about the boardwalk is there's not really much of an ocean view, as the dunes are much higher than the walkway itself. Now as we bring this day to a close, I just thought I'd send the drone up for a quick video of the beach strand at night. Of course, you can see the highly illuminated areas of the boardwalk, and way out in the distance, you can even see the beacon of the Oak Island Lighthouse, which we saw in our last video, along with the lights of a few vessels floating along the Cape Fear River. That's all for today. Please join us again for the fourth and final day of our trip to the Carolina Beach and Wilmington area.